Welcome to Development Business Advisors presentation on the World Bank, Introduction to Investment Project Financing, looking at the marketplace for goods and services on World Bank finance projects. Just to review what we're going to see in this presentation, we're going to have an overview of the World Bank, followed by a summary of World Bank contract opportunities. We'll have a global outlook on the marketplace. We'll review DBA services and then provide our contact information. Some of the acronyms and abbreviations you'll see in the presentation. I won't go over these individually. You should be able to download the presentation on the site where you're watching it, and you can take a look at those later. So, an overview of the World Bank. The World Bank Group consists of four institutions. You've got the World Bank itself, which is divided into two parts. The International Development Association is focused on the poorest countries, and the IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, focused on middle income countries. Both are lending to these countries. Um, IDA will charge a lower interest rate and provide more grants than IBRD, but they're both focused on developing countries. These are emerging and frontier markets. We'll get into more of that in this presentation. IFC is the International Finance Corporation. This is the private sector arm of the World Bank. They invest equity and provide debt financing to private companies in those same markets, emerging and frontier markets, developing countries around the world. We will not talk about IFC in this presentation. We have some other presentations on IFC operations. ICSID is the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes. This is an arbitration venue. And then there's MIGA, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, providing political risk and other guarantees for investments into, again, developing countries or emerging and frontier markets. So, looking at the World Bank specifically, this is the lending by the World Bank over the past few years. This is fiscal years. You can see these different categories are the regions. So, ESA is Eastern and Southern Africa. WCA is Western and Central Africa. LAC is Latin America and the Caribbean. SA is for South Asia. ECA is Europe and Central Asia. EAP is East Asia and Pacific. And MENA is Middle East and North Africa. You saw a run up in lending in response to the COVID crisis. That came down a bit in fiscal year 24. Um, and you see the regional distribution. This fluctuates over time. The specific countries within these regions that are borrowing more from the bank will also fluctuate over time, depending on crises, political situations and issues. Um, but overall, World Bank lending tends to increase. If you go back 20 years or so, lending was in the $20 billion range. Now we're in the 50 to 60 billion-dollar range. So always really growing in the past couple of decades. By sector, here you can see what the World Bank's focused on. Pub is public sector, EN is for energy, SOC is social sector, health, transportation, agriculture, water supply and sanitation, education, finance, industry, information and communications technology, and environment. Um, the environment is a specialized sort of carve out sector within energy. All of the energy lending will be renewable energy these days. The World Bank does not finance coal or oil and gas anymore. It used to do that and no longer does. So just like the regions, you'll see some change over the years in different sectors. Growing and decreasing. You see a run up in the energy sector the past few years, transportation sector decreasing, agriculture sort of peaking out there in 2022 and 2023. So depending on, again, borrowing countries, depending what's going on in the world, different sectors will um, be a larger or smaller portion of the overall lending. So, where are the contract opportunities on these loans by the World Bank? Each loan is a project, and each project has its own implementation schedule, typically over a 5 to 10 year period. Um, we're looking at aggregate numbers there, $50 billion, $60 billion a year in lending. Each loan maybe 200 to $200 million to $1 billion or even more sometimes. Um, and most of that 200 million, let's say for an individual loan, will be awarded in contracts. Those contracts are for a combination of goods, civil works, and consulting services. You see in the chart, civil works making up the vast majority of contracts by value. Construction obviously is very expensive, especially compared to consulting services and other services. Goods sometimes can make up a large portion, and you see certain years where these are probably the vaccines we're seeing here in 2021, 2022 that were purchased with the World Bank loans. So the total, if we're looking at total value of lending in 50 to $60 billion range, the total value of contracts is 10 to 20 billion a year typically. And this structure, this arrangement, and the process is similar at all the multilateral development banks. Um, and by that we mean Inter-American Development Bank, African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank. Those are the large regional development banks. There are smaller sort of sub-regional banks. There's the Islamic Development Bank, and more recently, under Chinese initiative, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, New Development Bank, all follow very similar processes and procedures. So once you sort of learn how the World Bank operates, you can use the same approaches or similar approaches to some of these other banks. The project cycle on the left here really is paired to different documents that are produced during that cycle. So, how are these projects formed? How are these loans conceived? That begins in the identification phase. You start with a strategy document at the World Bank. That's the main strategy document will be the country partnership framework that's signed and negotiated between the borrowing country and the World Bank that sets out priorities for the next 5 to 10 years. Within that framework, they'll identify several projects they want to have implemented. Then they'll start preparing those projects individually. One of the first documents that comes out is the project information document. This is just 2 to 3 pages, maybe 5 pages at most. That'll provide a summary overview of what they want to achieve, likely amount of the loan, very high level. Then you move into project appraisal, and the outcome of that is the project appraisal document. This is typically 200 pages or more, very detailed description of the components of the project, what's going to be funded and financed, who else besides the World Bank will support the project financially, who will be the implementing partners, and all those kinds of details. There will also be a procurement estimation of procurement in the appraisal document. What's going to be procured in terms of services, goods, construction, or civil works. So that's the background document that is delivered to the World Bank board for approval. That's how the project gets approved. Once the World Bank board approves the project, it begins implementation. Of course, there's some administrative setup. They have to set up a project management unit. There'll be some small procurement just for that, computers and cars and things like that for the project management unit. Then you get into implementing the project, and you'll see at first a general procurement notice for the project, just announcing that the project's been launched, the types of services and goods and civil works they expect to procure. And then as you get into implementation, you'll have specific procurement notices come out for individual procurements. Um, those run as I mentioned, a 5 to 10 year process. It can be to implement a project that includes the procurement. Obviously, civil works may take 2, 3, or more years itself. So that's how the project is implemented, mainly through procurement. Um, and then at the end of the project, of course, you have an evaluation, which can lead to additional projects. It will inform the strategy going forward, lessons learned, improvements to be made, gaps to fill, and that feeds into identifying additional projects in the future. So that's essentially the project cycle at the World Bank and at other development banks. Looking at some of the largest projects recently, this is up through fiscal year 24. Um, you see, some of these projects are almost $2 billion. Um, Many of these largest projects are policy loans, which means there will not be World Bank regulated procurement on them. This is essentially budget support for the borrowing country, but in some of these others, these are the others are investment project financing, IPF, and those will have procurement. But in this list, you see some of the biggest borrowers for the World Bank. Jordan will not be one of the largest borrowers. It's a small country. But Nigeria, India, Ukraine, especially of late, Indonesia, are some of the largest borrowers of the World Bank and have been for some time. Some of the largest contracts by value. You can see these getting up to $1 billion. Some of them, of course, you got the Chinese firms up top. We have several reports out now on one on Chinese firms in the World Bank market, one on Indian firms in the World Bank market, and another on Turkish firms in the World Bank market. Those are the countries where the most contractors come from on World Bank finance procurements. So you can take a look at those reports on our website. Um, Most of these are for large infrastructure projects in Pakistan, for example, Turkey. Um, in Argentina, you see two procurements, obviously related to COVID, one for Pfizer, one for Moderna. Um, those will not be typical large contractors, other than for COVID. Larson and Toubro is there in India. That is one of the largest, if not the largest, contractor by value on World Bank finance projects. This is an Indian engineering firm. Um, and you see a couple of these others. So this just gives you an idea of some of the largest contracts we'll see on World Bank finance procurements. And here we've got the country distribution. So in terms of lending, and these pie charts are aggregates of the past several years. So there are changes. India, for example, sort of moving away from World Bank, IPF, investment project financing, moving more to the policy lending. So the graph for the last year will look different than this one. Um, and these two pie charts are different for that reason. On the left, you've got percentage of loans by country. These are the biggest borrowers of the World Bank: India, Nigeria, Bangladesh. Um, this lending includes policy lending. If you look at percentage of contracts by country, there's a slightly different order here, and some different countries there, depending on these countries have more investment project financing, and so more World Bank procurement. You also see some of the regions pop up here. Increasingly, the World Bank is lending at the regional level in Africa. So WCA, West and Central Africa, one of the largest borrowers now of the World Bank, and also one of the largest markets in terms of procurement for contracts. ESA also showing up, Eastern and Southern Africa, as one of the top markets in terms of contracts for the World Bank. So that gives you a sense of the marketplace, both for lending and for contracting. The services we provide, these are for firms looking to get into the World Bank market. We will start off with a diagnostic assessment of opportunities for the firm. What services do you provide? What goods do you provide? Is there a market for that at on World Bank finance projects? We will help you track bid opportunities, provide market intelligence further out, because you don't want to just be reacting to procurement notices. You want to know well in advance when they're coming out. You want to know where to put your resources, given that there are large procurements coming, in a year or two down the road. We provide proactive advocacy and awareness raising both at the headquarters of the World Bank as well as in their country offices and regional offices, as well as with partner organizations. We will support you in operational policy engagement. We provide training such as this presentation to your staff, and will help you pursue similar strategies at other development banks and development finance institutions. Um, that's it for the intro presentation. This is our contact details. Please reach out if you are interested in our services and in learning more about the World Bank Marketplace. Thanks very much.